You got a good one.
Yeah.
Hello, we are here with this amazing couple, the beautiful Ben Bryant and his gorgeous bride, Elizabeth Hepburn. And their story is, I can't wait to dive into their story because let me just tell you a brief background about them. They met years and years ago during a production in a play that they were doing, and they knew each other for 4 months, got married. That lasted for 30 years. However, they did end up getting divorced for a while, came back together, and now it's been how many years?
Since she moved back in, it's been 13 years, and since we got remarried, it's been 8.
Wow. Okay, so we got to dive into this. So one thing I do want to mention is you both came from the entertainment industry, correct? Okay, so we're going to visit that too. But give me a little background on this. Elizabeth, what's your take on this? Obviously it was a whirlwind romance if you guys got married after 4 months.
Right.
In 30 years, something had to go right. But what went wrong? What made you guys finally decide, let's cut it?
Well, that was my fault.
Well, it was your choice. It
was my choice.
Anybody's fault.
What did you do? What led up to it?
Oh my gosh, I haven't thought about this in such a long time. I just felt like we were kind of stale, and I wanted us to freshen up, and I just felt like we needed to be apart.
Well, you talked about your own feeling that you were stifled and you needed to do something for your own personal growth. If I can remind you, I'm the rememberer around here.
No, this is good. This is good. Great.
So all about my heart, about my open heart, and I was getting some, so I just got, life, the vicissitudes of life came in, and I just got kind of bummed, and I couldn't find a way out of it. And I felt like we weren't working anymore. It wasn't working, the energy. So I said, I think we should move on.
Okay. Did you have any children?
No.
No children. And did you seek any type of professional help before this, or?
Yeah, we both went to separate shrinks, and then we had a couple of joint sessions with shrinks, and they were very helpful, but it didn't do us any good in terms of our relationship.
Got it. Okay. So Elizabeth, you used the words, it was your fault. So, obviously there's much more to it, but I want to ask you, if you were able to go back now during that time, what would you have changed, if anything?
I don't think I would have changed a thing, because I felt like it was so good that the fact that I had the courage to walk away took an enormous amount of strength for me, and I felt that it was really good that I was able to do it. Are you having trouble hearing me?
No, I can hear you. No.
I do have a problem. And I just felt at the time that, and it had been building for a couple of years, and I just felt that we needed to be separate for a while, and I didn't know what that was going to look like. I felt like we would probably get divorced, which totally freaked me out. But I just went for it.
And,
okay.
I had about 5 years before we split up, I'd started a new business, and I kind of put everything I had into it. And so money had become a problem because the business did not take off like we expected it to. And so there was financial pressure too that created a lot of stress. I think I've read a lot about divorce and separation and stuff, and it seems that that's an extremely common problem that breaks people up. They're not making the money they need to make, and there's pressure and emotional stress. And I was much better at handling the stress of being broke and being behind in payments and stuff like that. I'd had perfect credit my entire life until I started my own business, but it was much more emotionally difficult for Elizabeth, and that put a lot of stress on the relationship too.
Ooh, that's a big point that you just brought up, because yes, that's a huge, whether it's been 30 years, whether it's been 10 years,
Yeah.
that's a huge challenge for couples. So, when you own your own business and you're an entrepreneur, it's not like you can just walk away. It's tough. So, Ben, did you feel the relationship splitting apart? Was it almost palatable, or was it a surprise?
The fact that she wanted to actually separate was a surprise. I mean, I knew things were not going well. I mean, we started kind of drifting apart in many ways, but I don't know. It didn't hit me that there was anything that we couldn't overcome. It's just that there was the word estranged is an excellent word, because there was a clear sense of estrangement. The year before Elizabeth moved out, we didn't even spend the holidays together. She went off with her girlfriends for a weekend on New Year's or Christmas, I forget which it was, and I was alone, and I was very upset about that, but I didn't think there was anything I could do about it. So I just, I've always been kind of like, okay, that's what's happening now, and what's next? I don't dwell or there's a word I can't think of right now. I don't wallow in my difficulties or in my pain or in my emotional stress. I just sort of say, okay, next, and get on with it. And but it was definitely there. There was definitely a stress and a discomfort between us. We weren't as affectionate as we'd always been. Very affectionate. We already had a very active and healthy sex life, and we both loved it and had a great time and a lot of fun, and we were adventurous and all that. But there was just a separation that was going on, and it didn't really hit me until she asked me to move out, which I did not do. I said, if you want to break up, you move out. Hey, what can I tell you?
Okay, so I have to ask you this. I know, Elizabeth, I know you said you wouldn't change anything, because I think it's the journey and we learn from everything, right? All of our experiences we learn from. But I want to hear this from both of you. If you were giving advice to someone, at that stage in their relationship, what would your advice be from what you both learned?
Good question.
Well, yeah, I think Ben just said, follow your heart. And that's what I did.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, it was the most painful time of my whole entire life. That is for sure. And but I felt that we learned so much. We both learned so much.
Oh, in retrospect, it was a great thing. I mean, it was extremely painful for both of us at the time. I mean, I was just devastated. I gained 20 pounds and she lost 20 pounds. And I got so out of shape. I mean, oh my God, I don't even think about it. And I just was so depressed. I mean, the person that was my best friend that knew me and better than anybody else in the world didn't want to be with me anymore. I mean, that is truly devastating. Mm-hmm. And I got to thank the fellow that I was doing therapy with, because he really helped me rebuild my self-esteem, which really went right off the cliff, And Herb was very, very helpful in that, And it took me a while, and I got to the point where I thought, okay, well, this is over. I'm a healthy, virile man, and I need to find a lady. And all my friends fixed me up. I went out on, I don't know, half a dozen dates with lovely women that were very smart and very, good looking and all that stuff. And I could not have cared less. I think I had 2 dates with one or maybe 2 of them, but I just wasn't interested. And at some point, and I don't know exactly when it was, she left in July of 1996. And I think it was somewhere maybe 4 or 5 years later that I got to the point where I said, this is my woman. I'm going to get her back. I don't know how, but forget this dating and this messing around with other women. I want to get Elizabeth back. And it was just an intention. It didn't have any action plan, because there wasn't really anything I could actually do. I think it was before 9/11 when we started going to movies together occasionally. Yeah. So probably after about 4 or 5 years, we would, once in a while, we would go to a movie together. I'm a member of the Directors Guild, and they have these free screenings, and there would be a movie that I thought she'd like, and I'd call up and say, listen, you want to meet me at the Directors Guild Theater tonight for screening of, XYZ? And we would do that, and we'd ride the train. She was living a block away from our house with a friend. So that was the only time we were together. That, and somebody asked me if I saw Elizabeth, and said, yeah, we have joint custody of the Saab. So I would park the car, or she would park the. We live on New York City, so we have to repark the car every 2 days. But other than that, there was really no contact. And at one point, tell her about what happened at 9/11.
Well, 9/11 was devastating for me.
Mm-hmm.
For everybody.
For everybody. I mean, New York was like, what? And I realized at that point that I wanted to get everyone I loved. I wanted to embrace everyone that I loved, close to my heart. And I realized that Ben was one of those people. And I thought, I really got to look at this. I got to figure out, because this is, I got to work this out. So that's when I shift. That was a big shift for me.
Okay, so let me just make sure I'm understanding the timeline. How long had you been gone? How long had you left?
I left 96.
7, 8, 9.
5 years.
Yeah, about 5 years.
Okay, so it had been a while.
Yeah.
Been a while.
Okay.
I missed him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because he's a special guy. And
So, I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, it's okay. But that was such a shocking thing, particularly in the city. And I thought I have to look at this. But then we started really keeping company.
And had Ben already been trying to pursue you before 9/11? Was he, because he said he has this intention and this, I'm sure it was very deep rooted to come woo you back. Had that already started?
I didn't say anything to her about that. I didn't mention it. I mean, as I said, we occasionally would go to a movie, and I think sometimes we would stop for a bite to eat on the way back uptown, but I never said anything to her about, I've got to get you back, blah, blah, blah. I didn't want any kind of pressure of any sort whatsoever. I just wanted to let life its own self work it out,
Yeah.
And after 9/11, when she became more open to our relationship, at one point I remember I walked her into the lobby of her building, and I said, we are seeing each other now exclusively in public places. We're in movie theaters, we're in restaurants, we're in the lobby of your building. What do you think about maybe us going somewhere or something? I was sort of like playing, I was scared to death as I was saying these things, but they just sort of came out. And I expected her to say, oh, no. But she said, that's not a bad idea. Wow, I was so excited, I can't tell you. This was probably in maybe March or February, April of March of 2002.
Okay.
At which point we'd been apart for about almost 7 years, 6 or 7 years. Anyway, my first thought was, well, we had a great time when we went to Puerto Rico. And I brought that up. And she said, yeah, but if we get there and things aren't right, we're stuck in Puerto Rico. I said, yeah, good point.
It's a long swim.
So, yeah, then we decided to go up to the Berkshires. We'd gone there a few times up to the Berkshire Mountains for bed and breakfast and stuff. So that seemed to be okay. And I started checking out places and looking to make reservations. And then she said a variation on the same thing, like, it's a long walk down the Taconic Parkway. I had a friend at the time who worked for the Helmsley organization. He was an executive with the Helmsley organization. Mm-hmm. They have all these hotels in New York, including on Central Park South, which is the elite, hotels where the plaza is and all that. And I think I can't remember which one of the hotels it was, but he got us a suite that was like, at that time in 2002, it was probably, $1,000 a night kind of suite, and he got it me for like $400 or $500. So I picked her up in a limo.
Overlooking the park. We're looking at the park.
Yeah, the room. I'm working up to that.
Oh, okay.
Picked her up in a limo, and we had champagne and roses in the car, and I told the guy to take a turn around Central Park. ended up pulling up in front of this swanky hotel on Central Park South, and we went in and checked in, and what was it? What was it? You said, oh yeah. Then we went into the room, and we had this great view of Central Park. So we had this sort of 24-hour honeymoon, and it worked out great. I mean, we were, it was just like old times, as it were, only better because we'd both been on such a long drought. And so we had a great evening, went to a nice dinner, and, slept together for the first time since 1996. And that was the beginning of the reconnection. After that, we did some weekends, different places, and I would stay overnight sometimes in her tiny little bed, and we had a king-size bed at home, so we're used to spreading out, But anyway, so we just, we started, I guess the only word I can think of is dating.
Keeping company. Yes.
Keeping company, yeah, that's the old-fashioned term. And, so I, every once in the apartment she lived in was kind of dark, didn't have a lot of light, and our penthouse has got 360 degrees of light, and she would make some complaint about, oh, this apartment's so dark, and I would say, well, I know a nice apartment nearby that's got a nice terrace, and but I never put any pressure on her whatsoever. And then around 2003, I connected with a money guy, a producer. He wanted to learn to be a producer. I was shooting a documentary about a play, and this guy was in the play, and he was producing the play. And he said, I want to pick your brain about, producing film and video. So we had a meeting about that, and he said, how did you learn to be a producer? And I said, well, I got thrown into deep water, and I had to swim. I don't know if you've read any of my books, but I talk about that a great deal, how I just suddenly found myself as a production manager on a huge production, and I'd never done it before. So I had to learn really fast. So I said, that's the best way to do it. And he says to me, you got any projects? And I said, thank you, Jesus, in my mind. And I went into my drawer and pulled out 2 or 3 projects, one of which was what came to be the Better and Better series. It was an idea that Elizabeth had several years before we split up, about making videos with guided meditations and music and beautiful pictures for people who were going into surgery, to help them relax and get, in a good space to do it. And also another one for after surgery to help them relax and let the healing begin and that sort of thing. So I showed this to Eric, and he flipped out. He said, oh my God, this is great. We got to do this. So suddenly there we were with financing for this project. And he spent some serious money. I mean, he spent about $250,000 on this project altogether. And we went to 3 different locations to shoot the 3 different programs. And anyway, we were working together. She was still living, a block away, but we were working together. I was the director, and she was the actor and the writer. And it was a wonderful experience for both of us. And through that process, it increased our closeness. Working together on something that is your baby, as it were, it can either drive you apart or can bring you together. And this can really, really help to bring us together, I think. I think that was very much a part of it.
Oh, yeah.
And then sometime in the spring of 2005, she said, I think it might be time for me to move back in. I said, well, if you want to, it was like, so I got the place, I got the apartment, almost completely renovated and cleaned and repainted. And I had all the furniture, because I was a smoker in those days, and the place smelled like an ashtray, So I had the rugs cleaned and the furniture vacuumed, and, the place painted and everything. And on the 15th, I think it was the 15th of July, me and 2 of my friends in a hand truck moved all of her stuff from a block away into the apartment, which then looked like a warehouse. And we were once again living together. And then at one point, I think I might have mentioned getting remarried once, just in a casual way, because I did not want to put any pressure on her. This had to be her idea. I couldn't do it. I couldn't twist her arm. And one day she said, I think it's time for us to get married. And so we arranged, and we got married on our terrace. And I'll send you some pictures of our
yes, couple. Please.
And, we had it was like, somebody said it was like a party on your terrace. And while the party was going on, a couple of people got married. It was that kind of a thing, And we had a wonderful time, and, about 35 or 40 of our closest friends. And that was marriage number 2. So as we both often say, I like my second spouse better than I like the first one.
Okay, so I have to ask this because you did have time away. You both felt the pain. Now that you guys have come together and you've been together for a while,
Yep.
the second time,
Mhm.
what has changed in your relationship? How do you react to each other? Because still, I'm going to guess, just because I deal with a lot of people who've been married, that there still are tensions once in a while. So, what do you do that's different than you did before?
You want to start?
Well, the things that used to bother me don't
Mhm.
anymore. I mean, they just don't. I think, as we mature, it's you don't get so upset about itty bitty things. And I know that I just appreciate him and us like so much more.
Mhm.
It's really grown exponentially. It's just wonderful. So
Yeah, and when we do get upset, we still have fights and arguments, and yell at each other occasionally, but it blows over almost immediately. I mean, we had a little hollering at each other contest a couple of days ago, and one of us said, "Well, I got to go to the bathroom," and we went to the bathroom. He came back out, and by the time I got back, I don't even know which one of us that went to the bathroom. By the time we were back in the same room, it was all over, and we were joking and carrying on, and for me personally. I wrote my third book. My memoirs is a trilogy, and the third book is called "Waiting for Elizabeth." And it's the spine of the book is this stuff that that we're talking about with you right now. But it also involves a lot of video production stuff and other things that were going on in our lives. But in the epilogue to the book, I talk about how, having experienced losing the love of my life and then getting her back, the things that I used to kind of say, "Oh man, I don't want to do that," that's gone. I mean, if at 8 o'clock at night and we're settled down to watch TV, and she said, "Boy, I sure wish we had some ice cream," I'm out the door. I don't even think about it. 10 years ago or 20 years ago, I'd said, "Yeah, I wish we had some too. I'll get some tomorrow when I go to the store." Not anymore. Anytime she needs anything or wants anything, and I anticipate that she wants, or that she says she wants, or something that needs to be done that I would have resisted, I don't resist anymore. And what I said, I wish I'd had my book handy. I could have read the little page, because it's advice to men. It's advice to married people about having had the experience of losing it and then getting it back. And the way my attitude has changed about things like that. There is nothing that comes up now that I don't immediately or almost immediately take care of, because I know how much she means to me. I know how much richer my life is now that she's back in it, because I experienced being without her after I gotten used to her for 30 years, And so when we got back together again, I appreciate her so much more. And I think I go out of my way. I mean, I don't make a big deal out of it, but it's just a different personal relationship style, if you will. I don't have a word for it beyond that, but I just don't think about those things that used to bother me anymore. It's because, hey, she's back. I'll do whatever needs to be done.
Yeah.
well, that so like sure.
No, I don't mean that. She doesn't take advantage of that. I don't mean to say that at all. I'm just talking about, and I think she probably feels the same way. I mean, we've never really talked about it. It's just the way I'm experiencing it from my side. And that is that, and I think in general, and I don't know, I'm not an expert on the subject, but just from observation of many, many years, I think that men tend to be a little bit more laid back about stuff than women in general. And that if a woman wants something, generally she wants it more than a guy wants the same thing at the same time. You know what I mean? It's kind of, I don't know, I'm not making a lot of sense here. Maybe you should cut this whole section.
No, but I do understand what you're saying. And I think when we sum it all up, what I'm hearing from both of you is that you're much more aware of the gratitude and the appreciation. If there's a theme to all of this, that's what I would say, is that the gratitude and the appreciation that you both have mutually is what has made it so strong.
Yeah.
And go. No, what were you going to say, Elizabeth?
Gratitude is like my word. My first recording, I named gratitude, because I'm so grateful for Well, I had been very sick, so I was very grateful for my life. And, I just felt, I think it's very, very important gratitude.
I agree.
Yes.
I know one of the things I learned when I was a young actor is how when you're insecure, and actors are all inherently insecure, I think, even the great ones, maybe them even more than others. But a short example, I was doing a show, I was doing The Student Prince, which is, one of those operettas, and I was like a fish out of water. I mean, I'm not an epaulets and swords kind of guy, and during the entire production rehearsal period and the dress rehearsal, I felt like I should have been in another city. And when the dress rehearsal was over and the director goes through all these notes for like 3 hours, he didn't say one word to me. And after it was over at 2:00 in the morning, I went up to him and I said, Ernie, I know I'm terrible in this, but surely you could have given me some advice. He says, oh, no, you're fine, man. You're doing great. Just keep doing what you're doing. Well, that for me was one of the great lessons of my life, because later on when I started to direct and then when I became a producer and assistant director and stuff in film, I realized how important it is to let people know how much you appreciate what they're doing, particularly people that are insecure or not really good at what they do.
Mm-hmm.
You got to find something that you can honestly praise and then boost them with that, because that's the way you get people to do better. It's not by yelling at them. It's not by abusing them. It's by being kind to them. Moss Hart, one of the great directors in theater, said, the most important job of the director is to create an atmosphere of peace and tranquility in which the actors can do their best work. And that rule applies to leadership in any capacity, I think. And I don't know how I got off on that, but anyway, that's...
But I understand what you're saying. I think in a relationship, when you are building each other up, supporting each other, and encouraging each other, it builds up. You mentioned earlier how, Ben, you mentioned how you were seeing a coach or a counselor for a while to work on your self-esteem. I think when it can come from your partner, those words, that message that you're sending is the most valuable thing you can give them. And it's so important. So there's been, in this entire conversation, this short conversation, there are so many takeaways that people can put into their pocket from your experiences. And it's just so valuable to hear from a couple such as you that have gone through, a actual divorce, and to be able to come back together and show what truly is important and how to keep that glue together and how to keep on growing.
Yeah.
That's an immense gift that you're sharing with